fun to watch this aura. Last time I was in a room and there were only projectors, it was in Vienna, and it was sometime in the, I don't know, 1997, something like that, 96. And I had just come out of a room with generators, which you all understand. You know, generator humor is allowed here amongst projectors. And I remember what kind of an incredible buzz that was. I mean, I have a totally undefined sacral center, so I was roaring on that buzz. And then 2 hours later, I go into the room and there's these projectors. And I suddenly realized that I was all alone. You know, I was no longer in an enveloping aura. You know, it wasn't there anymore. There was just this. Anyway, all right.
We won't fight unless you want to.
Yeah, I know. I do. I get it. Manifestors have a funny thing with projectors. You know, I mean, we used to run the world. I mean, this is what we did, and you're supposed to take over. So there's a certain amount of resentment in being a manifestor. Looking out at projectors, and my question is, how do you do that being a non-energy type? And though it's my favorite joke, it's true. That is, you know, what it is to be a projector is deeply, deeply complex. I mean, it's deeply complex, and at the same time, it's not passive. It's not intended to be passive at all. So there's a whole set of skills that have to be developed in order for a projector to be able to fulfill their possibilities. Otherwise, projectors get deeply, 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 deeply conditioned. I mean, if you see the illustrations of what it looks like when you know, a projector is in the aura of somebody else, you know, and you see this projector aura where all the energy field from their body, I mean, all the energy field is being focused into this stream of auric contact. And when you look at that, most people pay attention to that because they have all of their stories about what it's like to be on the other side. You know, what's it like to be on the other side of the projector and their focused energy. But nobody looks at what's actually happening to the projector. Because if you could stand behind the projector's back, you know, and you look at them while they're in that process and they've got all their energy into somebody, they're totally naked. I mean, totally. I mean, everything about you is left open. All of your energy, it's like putting all of your energy into a very narrow offense, and there's no defense whatsoever. None. So, you know, when I think about projectors, I think about projector children. I mean, nice for me. I just became a grandfather, so I got a projector grandson. Right? So I'm thinking about my projector grandson. You know, the first thing that happens to a projector right from the very beginning is that while they're trying to figure out what's here to recognize, they're already lost in the conditioning. I mean, already lost in the conditioning. And projectors are not like generators. I mean, generators aren't I terrific? You know, and there's this, all the many millions of things that I can tell you about me. You know, because this is what generators are for. Eh? Know thyself. That's their trip. Eh? So they want to know every single minutiae, right? Which can be very beneficial if you're trying to figure out, you know, who you are and what life is about for you and all that stuff. Projectors aren't interested in that. You know, there is this intelligent recognition that one should know something about oneself. But it's the other thing. You know, because this is what projectors are here for. Projectors are not here to look in. I mean, this is where projectors get so messed up. Eh? The projector that's looking in. You know, this is the projector that cranks on their mental stuff, you know, all of that stuff going through their inner recognition program, which only leads to a mess. Eh? I mean, it only leads to a mess. You know, everything about being a projector is that it's out there. It's out there. Which means that, see, if you're a manifester, you can just do your thing, which means that you don't really care whether anybody else is with you or not. But if you're going to be a projector and you're going to be able to guide somebody, you have to have a totally different connection to the other in this life. I mean, this is the thing that I find so difficult when I look at the role of projector in being, the force that is here to really bring order into all of this chaos. I look at that and I say, how do you do that without muscle? How do you do that without manifestor kick them in the butt? And of course, manifestors don't develop these social skills. We've got a closed aura. It's not like we figure out, this is how you do it. You figure them out and you get them to do what they think they're doing because you're getting them to do it anyway because you figured that out. Because being a projector is about figuring things out. And most of all, it's about figuring out the way in which the other operates in any kind of circumstance, environment, condition. Because this is the whole theme, is recognition. I think most projectors, when they first discover what it is to be a projector, first of all, there's a certain level of annoyance. It's like, what is this? What do you mean? That's the first thing. The second thing is not really grasping the deepest keynote that's there in the design of a projector. That is, you're here to both be recognized and to recognize. And it's sort of like a catch-22. That is, the more you recognize, the more you recognize. And the more you recognize, the more you recognize. And it goes on and on and on. It's this catch-22. But it means that there is an inherent dilemma that is there for the projector, because what do you put your attention to? I mean, what's worth recognizing? And what's worth being recognized for? Because after all, if you're not a success, you've got a sour life. You're going to be bitter. You're going to be pissed off at this whole thing, because everything about what it is to be a projector is to be a success, and not in the material sense of the word. I mean, it's not about that. You have to deconstruct that to any level. It's about feeling within yourself that you're a success in your process, in your life, whatever the case may be. And, the only way that you get there is by getting the recognition. If you don't get the recognition, you're not going to have that sense of success. The recognition brings energy. It brings generating and manifesting and all of the various things that are part of your process. So the question comes down to, where do you put your attention? I mean, where do you put your attention? And of course, this goes back to what is the whole basis of human design. That is, are you going to be operating out of your mind? If you're operating out of your mind, you're out of your mind. It's just what's going to happen. Because the moment that you're, that's your trip and you're going to try to figure all of that out mentally, it isn't going to work. It isn't. Because, of course, because you can recognize, there's all kinds of things you can recognize at the superficial level. Projectors have a gift of being very intelligent in their recognition capacity. So, yeah, you can recognize all these things. But if you don't really know what is correct for you, you end up putting your precious energy, which is really precious as a non-energy type, putting your precious vitality into recognizing something that doesn't bring you the rewards that you're here for. See, the only way that the projector is going to be able to change the way in which things work is if they get recognized, and that recognition turns into a capacity to guide the other. Manifestors and reflectors, we stand outside of what's going on this planet. There's 67% of the planet that are generators, and there's 22% of them that are projectors. There's a lot of human beings. It's nearly 90% of humanity. So that cabal, that combination is what the story is all about. Now, generators dominate the plane, and they dominate the plane with frustration. I mean, if you look at the world around you, one of the most dominant themes of our planet is frustration. This is a not-self-generator system, flooding our planet. The only thing that changes that is the potential in projectors. I mean, it's interesting to think about. Generators are builders. When manifestors ruled, the manifestors said, it's this way, now, and they sort of moved along because they wanted to survive. We don't have that anymore. It doesn't work that way. And if generators don't build correctly, if they don't build in a way that is healthy, we all end up with the same problems on the planet. And the relationship between the projector and the generator, which, I've been watching this now for 23 years in my process. And if there are nasty things to be said, Generators and projectors are capable of saying them of each other. You know, there is this thing that is there that you can really feel. It's the kind of tension that you get in kids in school when they're really attracted to each other, but they don't know what to do with it, you know? It's sort of like, you know, and there's all these little things that occur. Generators are waiting to be asked, after all. And projectors are the only beings that recognize how to use energy. I mean, you know, my favorite joke about projectors, you're not here to work. You know that. You're not here to work. Work is not something that's really exciting. You know? I mean, it isn't. It's just not the thing, right? Generators are here to work. You know? When you see a generator working, you see somebody that's in their element, right? You know, projectors don't do that, right? They don't want to do that. They want to be able to sit on the chair beside the place where the generator is working and admire the effort. And at the same time be able to say nicely, could you sort of do it a little bit better over here? Because it really... Now, you see, as a manifestor, I can't do that. I don't know how projectors do that. I mean, I don't know how you get away with that. And the only way that you get away with that is that there is some kind of assumption in the aura of the other that you actually know what you're doing. This is where the trouble is. I mean, the fact is that most projectors are unaware, after all. And most projectors deeply, deeply suffer. I mean, no joke in that. Not a nice life if you don't understand and you don't have those forces around you that respect you for what you are. But you also have to see that despite the fact that we do these things with adults, the real problem is childhood. It's the childhood of the projector. And it's not just the childhood of the projector, but it's those points in the projector's development. You know, those points where they begin to think about what they want to do in their life and, you know, all this kind of stuff. You know, that's the point where if they're not operating correctly, if there isn't somebody there to explain to them that, look, it will come to you. You know, this is the great anxiety and fear that is in the heart of every projector. Deep, deep, deep fear. Eh? It's this fear that he's crazy. Life does not come to you, but it does. I mean, it's the whole thing to grasp. You know, it is what it means to be a projector. This thing about waiting for the invitation. Waiting for the invitation does not mean that there aren't all kinds of things for you to react to. But that waiting for the invitation, that waiting for the formality of life to deliver, because that's what it's about. It's only there that you really find your place. And your place begins with that thing that hooks you, that thing that, you see, it must be run by a generator. Randy, go out in the hall, and just before the bathroom, on the right, there's the light switch. For those of you online, we're sitting in the dark. Not that that affects any of you. You can enjoy your light. Did you find it? Let there be light. A number of years ago, I started the Jovian Endowment Program for projectors, which didn't please a lot of people who aren't projectors, by the way. No, really. I have never stopped receiving complaints about that. I never stopped receiving complaints. And I don't do it because I have a particular soft spot for projectors. Let's be clear about that from my manifestor perspective. You know, it's like, okay, no, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the simple fact that if you're going to be a projector, you're going to have to study. You're going to have to study. This is the whole thing about recognizing. Recognizing is not simply an innate, talent that's there and that's it. It is not the point. You really have to earn recognition. After all, you come in on this plane with a geometry that says you're either going to be successful or sour. Isn't that a nice geometry? There's your incarnation. Here you go. You either make it or you're going to have a sour life, right? And the only way that you're going to get away from that is what you master. What you master. I mean, this is the whole thing about recognition. And it doesn't matter what it is. It can be the most mundane. It can be the most exalted. That's not the point. The point is that there has to be some kind of knowledge base that you immerse yourself in, because this is where you get your recognition. And this is where you develop your skills. So, for example, a generator, technically speaking, all they ever need is to be told what their strategy and authority is. Technically, that's all they need. Just respond, stop initiating, go away. That's all. All they need. That's all I ever tried to do with them. It didn't work, but nonetheless, that's all they need. A projector, you can't do that. You can't say, here's your strategy and authority and see ya. No, it doesn't work that way. It can't work that way. It starts with, you better study this. Not only you better study this, but study this looking at everybody's chart other than your own, basically. Projectors come with these libraries of charts, right? Every being whose data they have ever culled from anywhere. Okay, we got them. This is what it's really about. The only way you see yourself is through the mirror of the other. This is the education of a projector. You tell a projector they're 4037 and they go, interesting. And then they'll spend some time investigating what that is and, trying to figure out the combinations and everything else. But they don't necessarily relate that to themselves. They don't, because it's not the way they recognize. You don't recognize yourselves. You're not good at recognizing yourselves, which is often why you carry a chip on your shoulder that has all that sourness sort of stored and hardened, and because that's not the gift. It's why it's a slow process at the beginning for projectors. Because what happens is the first time you get to see somebody else's 4037, you go, look at that idiot. Oh, hey. That's me. It's like, there's this, and you don't get it directly. It's not what you're about. It really isn't. It's like with the manifester. I'm not here to know about myself. All I want to know is how I can have impact. That's all. That's what manifestors want. How do we have impact? So if you're a projector, everything about being you as a projector begins with this potential that you have, this innate gift that is there to be able to recognize. And it comes to the question of, how do you know what's the right thing for you? How do you know what is the right thing that you put your energy to? Because most projectors, because they're, into this recognition, and because their parents, despite everything else, they can't help but be aware of it, you end up being pushed into systematic and organized ways in which your mind is supposed to work, and the things that you're supposed to study, and the things you're supposed to become good at, and the things you're supposed to become recognized for, which usually collapse when you're 40, along with the marriage and the dog and everything else that went with it. And then you've got all that stuff inside of you that's never been you. It's the other thing. Other types, when they think about projectors, I don't know why that is, but they always think about a projector that only has two centers defined. It's like they're supposed to be these open creatures. They're not. You know that. I know projectors that have 8 of the 9 centers defined. You can have incredibly complex projectors. And it makes it even more difficult in a sense. That is, projectors within their own grouping, that there are so many different kinds, and we'll look at them as we go through, so many different kinds of projectors. The projector children, they're almost invariably raised to find their manifesting, to find their generating, to find power. that the fact that they're not designed to work is often seen as lazy, you know, that they lack motivation, that they need to be kicked and they need to be pushed and they need to be this and that. And of course all the things that come with that in terms of, you know, the way in which that impacts their conditioning. I think it's one of the most difficult things to be a projector in some point in your midlife, and you meet this knowledge, you know, because you already have all these hooks in you. You do. You have deep, deep, deep hooks in you. Hooks from your, you know, growing up and your family pent on your parents and siblings and, you know, lovers and children and, you know, all of these things. And when you're a projector, all of that is deeply, deeply locked into your system. Again, remember, you know, you're putting out this very focused beam, and at the same time you're extremely vulnerable. And all of that vulnerability is something that you carry around within you. And, you know, it's not something that you can just throw away. It isn't. It isn't. You know it well. You're here to recognize. The dilemma for so many projectors is that they recognize their own suffering and they really get into it. You know, not only do they recognize it, but they explore it and they carve it open and they take it out into tangents. And, you know, you go through this whole recognition movie until you're so far out on a tangent that you're so far away from what's possible for you. You know, I have two themes for you this weekend. You know, one theme we're going to do today, I'm going to give you some very personal in that way, because I'll reference every single one of your charts in the workshop this afternoon. I'm going to show you the way in which you can recognize interference and dysfunction in auras around you. One of the real dilemmas for projectors is that somebody comes up to you and invites you, you know. And it's a nice invitation. And however you operate, whether you're emotional or not, and you go through your process, you think it's a good idea, you get into that. It may be a relationship, for example. It doesn't mean that that's a guarantee of anything. I mean, it doesn't. It just means that you entered into something correctly. You may have entered into something correctly that will go wrong. No harm in that either. If you enter into something correctly that goes wrong, there are lessons to be learned. They're valuable. You don't get scarred, blah, blah, blah. You know, so there are all these things about every single time that you enter into a relationship with the other, from the very moment that you start your process, constantly what is happening to you, constantly what's happening to you is you're absorbing that, and you're taking that, and it's building up layers and layers and layers of reinforcing, in that sense, who you're not. It's constantly doing that. And it is very, very difficult for the projector to be able to just simply, you know, let all that go. You don't let that go. And you can't necessarily let go all those beings that are connected to you that have all this stuff that is deeply embedded in you. You can't. There's only one way that you can, those of you that are involved in this process, is that quite literally you need to see them. You're here for recognition. I mean, it's the only thing that will save you. You know, if you know that the person who is an idiot is designed to be an idiot, you can let them be an idiot, can't you? Every village has one, right? You know, and they don't want to get rid of the village idiot because that person is perfect for being the village idiot. So you let them be the village idiot, and then you don't have a trip with them. You know, and it's the same thing for all of these forces that are in your life. Not to suggest that they're all village idiots, but nonetheless, there are all these forces in your life that if you don't use your recognition skills to see them, you cannot free yourself of the trips that are connected to it. Because it's full of all kinds of trips. You know, I mean, the moment that you can... It's one of the things that I like so much about basic mechanics. Basic mechanics say, you can't change anything. You can't. You know, you've got to compromise with a partner in a channel. It's not like you can change that. You can never win that battle. You can't change them. You can't get them to stop. You can't get to do anything about it other than to see it for what it is. And of course, this is the way things work. That relationship with that person that has always been, you know, a point in your life, whatever that means. Look at them. I mean, because this is what you're here for. You're not here to look in yourself and say, oh, I'm suffering from all this crap. It's not the movie. It isn't. It's looking at them and seeing them and saying, oh, what an idiot. Look, you can see it. And you can see precisely what happens when you take that force and you put it in your aura instantaneously. And you can see what it does to you. Because they're just patterns. It isn't anything else. It's just patterns. So when you get into that relationship with the other, to get back to my point as I'm wandering around, when you get back to that relationship to the other and you go in and it all seems okay, there are things as a projector that I can show you that you can recognize in what happens in your own mental system when somebody in your life starts becoming a negative force. The kind of thing where you can see the influence of the other because you're here to recognize that. When your skill set is honed to recognition instead of self-exploration. Don't get caught in your trip. Really. I mean, it's very nice that you have a design. Congratulations. And you have a rudimentary understanding of it. Very nice. Put your eyes out there. Your aura doesn't make a U-turn and go pointing back into you. It's not the way you work. And you see, the more self-absorbed you are in this internal process where you're pouring all this recognition in on yourself, you're just choking off your life. And you're not seeing. And you're here to see. A manifestor can drag others by brute force. You cannot. You never will. You have to be able to see. It's the capacity to see. It's the wisdom in the recognition that leads to the potential to guide others. You have to be able to see. It's what you're here for. And you've got all these forces in your life. It's great research material, after all. But you have to see what they do to you. You have to see what happens. You have to see what you do to them. So you can see what happens, and you see it on the outside because that's where you know how to look. And anything that you need to learn about yourself, you'll find out there. Out there, not in here. Don't go looking in here. It's the same thing for me as a manifestor. This is generator stuff. It's what generators do. They spend all their time going in here. All their time. I'm this, I'm that. It's not what we are. It's where they belong. That's their trip in this life. That's what they carry as a journey that's not your journey. You're the last people on earth who should be going through some, introspective flagellation, right? Oh, I notice that I'm such a jerk, You don't see. You certainly don't see yourself. You can't. You're a projector, Think about the type itself. You're a projector, You put things out, you see out, you're here. I mean, today I'll show you how you can notice these influences at the mental level. But tomorrow I'll show you what the role is that you're here to actually play in this life. And it's not about you inside. It's about what you see and do on the outside. It's about your potential to guide others. It's about your natural gift to be in that position, to guide others. I mean, that's where you get your juice. You don't get it from guiding yourself. That's where you have trouble, big trouble, That's when you become the all-knowing of nothing, I'm going to guide myself. This is what I'm going to do with my life. This is what I recognize. Right. Very good. It just doesn't work. It doesn't. See, the whole projector thing to me is just it's so beautiful. And yet, we've never had a role like this. I mean, projector is new, relatively speaking, in the evolution of these forms. We don't have very much training. Projector children aren't trained to their, what is in fact their right. As a matter of fact, it is stepped on from the moment that they come into the world. It really is. They're constantly forced to look at themselves. Projector children are bitter early. Constantly forced to go inward, because they're not a manifester or a generator, because they're not this or that or whatever the other thing may be. And immediately their process in life, your process in your lives has been this internal recognition process. It's not you. It's not what you're here for. It's not what you're here to see. It's not your trip. You would all be better off today or tomorrow, whenever I look at your charts, to pull up somebody else's, while I'm mentioning yours, so you can look at theirs. Because this is what you're really good at. This is what matters. And it's also the only thing that's going to liberate you. You have to neutralize all of that conditioning that you've taken in. Not remove it, but neutralize it. Take away its power. As a projector, you have no choice but to have a life that's dominated by social dynamic. You have no choice. Your life is about the other. There's no way out of that. And if you're a split definition projector, it's even more about the other. And it goes on and on. Everything about who you are. And it means that who's in your life is one of the most important things for you always. Yet at the same time, for you to be able to see that, you're here to guide many. The fractal of, if you look at generators who are the builders and they're 67% and you got 22% projectors, every projector is here to have 3 generators. Sounds like the Mormons, no? You're a projector, you get to have 3 generators. They're all yours. Okay? And do a good job. But it's true. It's true. When you think about it, it really is. I'm a manifester, I used to have 7 or 8 generators. Real power. Don't mean to give you a hard time. You can have 3, it's okay. Think about it, though. Generators need to be guided. The guiding force are projectors. There's 3 times as many generators. It tells you something about what is the evolutionary dynamic that's there. You're not just here for that other. There are others that have to be there as well. In other words, there's a role that has to be played out. It is the role of what it really is to be a projector. The projector in business analysis in BG5, the projector is referred to as the alpha. This is the role. It's an alpha role. It's a role that says, I will guide you. And it's a role that is achieved but through recognition. That's the thing that's so interesting. If you're going to be a projector that has 3 generators, it's 3 generators that have asked you to be their projector. Because that's the way that it works, after all. In other words, the one thing about being a projector is that you cannot demand or claim anything. You can't. You can't. Everything about being a projector is waiting for the recognition of what you're here to do. Now, there's simple ways to look at that. You can look at your chart and look at the definitions that you have. And you'll see that in those definitions themselves are keys to the way in which the other is here to recognize you. You've got mental definition. They're going to recognize that you have mental definition. Basically, what they're recognizing is how much influence your aura has on them that they can pick up these things. It's something else about the projector that I find perhaps the most interesting. Whereas the generator is a natural, enveloping social organism. In other words, that, generators are really here to hold the human population together in that sense. This is their force. Generators can be at their very best in complex social environments. The family environment, the penta environment, the larger environment. This is generator environment. They're the majority, after all. They're comfortable in these groupings. But as a projector, you're a projector and you're sitting in a room with 2 people. You're screwed. Isn't that amazing? Just like that. You're screwed.
See, look, you're a projector. The only thing you can do is put your energy into one being at a time. So you're in a room with two people, and you put your energy on A. B is annoyed because B wants your attention. The only thing that others who are not projectors find interesting about projectors is they seem to give you full attention. Even when they're not, by the way. I mean, the aura feels like that. It certainly feels like they're right there, and they're right there for you. And there is an expectation that comes with that, and projection that comes with that. So you're in the room with the two people, and you're looking at one of them, and the other one's saying, they don't like me anymore, or they don't like me as much, or they like them better, or they agree with them and don't agree with me. And then you shift your gaze to the other one, and you put your aura in the other one, and the other one thinks that they're being betrayed, and that they're being ripped off, and that, you're terrible, and you were just using me, and now you're over there. And projectors get this all the time. So, you're a parent, and you're sitting there with your partner and a child. You're screwed. You're in the office, you got two people in the room with you. You're screwed. So you end up with this reputation of people saying, well, they're not really interested, and it goes on and on and on. I mean, you have to understand what you are as a force. One-on-one? Oh, nothing like being one-on-one with a projector. Eh? If you got to get something off your chest, nothing better than having a projector in front of you, even if they're not listening. Because it feels like they're right there. It feels like they're there for you. You have their whole energy focus. And then, of course, the projector has an advantage. This is the projector's advantage. One person at a time. This is the key to you being recognized. Think about, again, your aura. Auras are the way in which we meet each other. And there's so much information that's in that aura. Because of the focused and penetrating aura that a projector has, when a projector puts their aura into you, you're getting very, very specific information. You're getting them. And it's holding the other person to that. That's why there are people that resent projectors. And resent the power of this aura to penetrate them and lock them in. I mean, I can walk into a room and have a projector walk into the room behind me and feel their aura on my back. I mean, you can feel the presence of a projector the moment they put their attention on you. The moment you put your attention on anyone, they feel your aura instantly. So you have to begin to understand how you can take advantage of what it is to be you. You're here to recognize one-on-one, you take in a tremendous amount of information from the other. You're here to both be recognized and to recognize them, and you get to see them. So if you're going to be in any kind of situation where you have to, be an authority or provide advice or all of these things, those are the classic situations for you when you're one-on-one with the other person. If you're a projector and you want to solve a problem, in any kind of situation, don't do it in a group. Projectors, do not belong in those environments unless they're leading them, but not being inside of them. Because the moment you're inside, you're going to be alienated. I mean, it's the first thing that happens to projectors in a group. They're very quickly alienated. There they are in that group, and they're talking to the person beside them because that's how their aura works, and everybody else is separate from them. And they don't connect, because they can only do this one thing at a time trip. And then they get the reputation from the others that, it's not their thing. It's not your thing. It isn't. And again, you see, the only way that you can rise up above the mass, in that sense, is by the depth and quality of the recognition. It's what you master. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, becoming an architect or a plumber or learning human design or the many, many, many things that a projector can put its focus to. But it's about grasping that without the study, without the recognition, without the power that comes with that, you're not going to get out of the bitterness trip. You're not. You're not going to be able to fulfill yourself. And you see, when it comes to humans, you're really advantaged. That is, those of you with access to this knowledge, because you can see the other. This changes everything. I mean, it's where I started before. You want to free yourself from all the bullshit you carry around? Take a look at the people in your life and see what happens. Look at the mechanics. You'll discover right away, oh, this one does this to me, and, on and on and on. And then you can see something else. They're helpless. I mean, they're all helpless after all. It's not like it's their fault. You discover that, one of your parents is an extreme jerk, and they did this to you and that to you and this to you, and, it's not their fault. It's not like anybody's to blame. It allows you to free yourself. We all have ways in which we connect with the other, and any connection with the other changes the formula. It just does. You become the juxtaposition of those two things. You become something new. Whatever that thing that emerges becomes, it gets to tell you the story. It gets to say to you, all right, this was what was going to happen to you. You were going to be conditioned by this and this and this. So let go. See it for what it is. And as projectors, you have to do that. I mean, you have to learn how to free yourself from that. You do. And you can only do so by seeing it. See it mechanically. See it for what it is. And accept that. Because there isn't anything else you can do. Most people think that they go through processes like this to change themselves. It's not about changing. It's about being aware. It isn't about anything else. It's nothing to change. When you're aware, it all looks different anyway, even though it's the same thing. Because it does. It's about the awareness, and you don't get to the awareness until you can let go of all of the personality bullshit that you attach to all of these things that have happened to you. This thing and that thing, and, this person and that person, and you go through that whole movie. Because once you get that out of the way, you can begin this process of starting fresh. I mean, there's nothing else to do after all. Once you get to the point that you see the movie, all you can do is just do your best, to live this for what you are, And it means that you need to get to this place where what you're interested in is where your recognition points you. You're here to be absorbed in that way. Projectors are here to experience the intellectual life. They are. You can't be a guide without it. You're here to grasp the essence of this thing or that thing or the other, and ultimately be able to help people deal with that. As a non-energy type, you're here to understand how others are here to use their energy. You're here to be energy guides. You're not here to be messed up in your own trip. And not here to be messed up because you spent your life looking for the juice. Where is it? Like the guy with the television and the plug and no place to go. Where is it? Where do I plug in? See, what's so interesting for me is that I like to look at the evolutionary movement, the story, the big story. And when you think about our predecessors, the seven-centered beings, they were ruled by manifestors. I mean, it was a manifestor world, and generators were slaves. The manifestor would whip them, slaves. Get things done and build things and build all this stuff and whatever. And you see, with the advent of the nine-centered being, what we are, comes a totally different way in which we're here to move into the future. And it truly is in your hands. And it's not to say that, you got responsibility in that sense. It's about grasping it. Because what I get to see from projectors is that they're so self-absorbed in their suffering, because they are. Generators suffer on the outside. They make a mess of the world we live in. That's how they do that. That's their suffering. They just externalize their suffering. You internalize all that stuff with your recognition mechanism. And you get into this spiral that you just can't just get out of. It's there. It's constantly grinding you. And you see, the moment that you can release yourself into what mechanics provide. I mean, think about it. It's not spiritual. It's not mystical. It's just mechanics. I mean, it isn't anything else. And it's not like you can argue with it. It's like 1 and 1 equals 2. The shin bone's connected to it's just mechanics. And when you can get to that place where you can let yourself accept your mechanics. I mean, after all, we're all limitations. Eh? We all got our little bits and pieces of this and that and whatever the case may be. But it's only when you get to the place that you accept that mechanism that you begin to see what it is and where it can take you. And you see, as projectors, you have to see that you cannot spend your life blaming. You can't. This is the curse in the projector life, is blame. His fault, it was her fault, it was the dog's fault, it was God's fault. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And the blame gets layered and layered and nuanced and nuanced and nuanced. And you see, there isn't any. There never has been. There's no such thing. There's nobody to blame. There is only seeing. There's only seeing. And the moment that you attach anything to anything, you're lost. The moment you say it's their fault, you've attached all that to them. And you're going to have to deal with all of that forever. And it's nothing. We're not here to do that. See, because you're here to recognize, you get caught in reasoning. All the reasons. There's all these reasons. Projectors and their reasons drive me crazy. They got a reason for everything. It goes on and on and on. That's really good if you're talking to a generator. Give them a reason, okay? Why they have to do that thing that they have to do that you can't do because you don't work. But don't do that reasoning madness for yourself. This is insanity. The reason I got up this morning, it gets to a point where it's really mad, right? I only got up this morning because, I mean, this is the dilemma that comes with just the surface. I love the surface. I love anything that's simple. Complex things are terrible. Simple things always carry the truth. It's a simple thing. Recognition is a simple thing. But look at where it leads to. You're here to design to recognize, but nobody taught you how to get there. Nobody explained to you the rules. Nobody put you in a situation that, your formative years were actually focused in the right direction, all of that stuff. Nobody did any of that. So, you end up with all of those little recognitions that you turned into this and that under the pressure of your conditioning, and you feel terrible about all of it because it seems like such a waste. And you're still in the same trip because this is the whole thing that happens to projectors. Because after all, until you can reorganize your physical life, the beings in your life, the auric world that you live in, then everything is just constantly being reinforced. Same reinforcement all the time. Same old stuff over and over again with the same reasons rehashed and, the same stuff. And then you don't get to go to the party. I mean, you don't get to enjoy the beauty of what it is to be a projector. I don't know a lot of projectors that are in that place. Because you have to go through certain processes. Number one, you need a 7-year deconditioning process. That's what human design is all about. You enter into human design, you start following your strategy and authority. It takes 7 years cellularly, 7 years to change the basic mechanism so that you get rid of the conditioned memories that are being held in the cells. So already you're dealing with a time frame. It takes time, these things. Projectors are very slow in the way in which they develop their journey in human design. I mean, I've watched it for so long. And it is because it takes momentum until they begin to see recognition upon recognition. As you begin to see that world around you, those beings around you, the way in which they operate, you begin to recognize the inherent truths in that. You get closer and closer to seeing what is possible for you. But you see, until you are really surrendered, and surrender is just strategy and authority. It isn't anything else, not some fancy word. Surrender is about allowing yourself to be freed from your mind's control of your decision making. I've already described to you, because of the nature of your recognizing function, your mind is a minefield. Your mind is the place where all the trouble is. We always have this duality with everything in our nature, and mentally this is a fundamental duality. Mind on one side is the great horror show that's going to just drive you crazy, and mind on the other side can be a very beautiful thing. And you have to see that as long as your mind is involved in your decision-making process, that your mind is moving you, that your mind is driving you, that your mind is pointing you, you're in trouble, because that's not the way it works. It doesn't. Mind does one thing really well. It measures. It measures. It doesn't really know whether this thing over here, as opposed to that thing over there, is really the better of the two. It just measures. It says this thing over here is over there, and this thing is over there. That's it. But of course we have pressure on our minds as not self, that our minds are going to run our lives, because that's the way we were raised and that's the way we were conditioned. So you force your mind to make a choice. You say to your mind, well, is it going to be this or is it going to be that? I have a great story. The guy wakes up one morning and his mind says to him, we need a change. We need a change. Let's sell everything we have, quit our job, go to Las Vegas, and put all that money at the roulette table on 18 black. This is mind, right? Guy wakes up the next morning, his mind's telling him the same thing. Come on, let's do it. We need to change our lives. I know this is going to work. This is really going to be terrific. I know that. I'm your mind. Listen to me. This is really going to work. Let's do all of that. And of course, eventually, he sells everything. He quits his job. He goes to Las Vegas. He goes to the roulette table. He takes all his money. He puts it on 18 black. It comes up 14 red. His mind says, shit. Because this is what mind does. And then mind will say, well, okay, let's do this now. And everybody in their life knows this. Your mind telling you to do something, you do it, the whole damn thing blows up. It's not like your mind does a mea culpa. Oh, I'm so sorry I blew that one. I don't know how I got that one wrong. Punish me. No, it's, hey, next one. I got this one on my list. Let's try this thing over here. Let's try smack. Let's see if it works. This is mind. And then you have all these human beings going, oh, yeah, I really trust my mind. Mind doesn't know. It's why in human design you have a strategy and authority to avoid the mind making decisions. Where your mind is a delight is outer authority. You're a projector. You're here to guide. You use all that measuring as outer authority for the other, for your three generators. Larry, Curly, and Moe, you tell them to do their thing. You do this, you do that, you do that. That's what you're really good at. You get it all out. But not inside. This does not work. Your mind is not going to find the answer for you, will never find the answer for you. And of course, because you're so good at making up reasons, think about what that's like. If you're emotional and you're a projector, and I don't ever want to be that. I'm really glad being what I am, You're emotional and you're a projector and you wake up in the morning and you're down in your wave. You have some of the most incredible reasoning that will go with that. I'm down in my wave because, and you've got more becauses and more reasons than anybody else. You could ultimately blame the entire universe for your mood. It's the same thing if you're a projector and you're individual, and you wake up in the morning and you're melancholic and you're going, I'm sad because of you. I mean, the insanity of making up reasons for chemistry, for mechanics. It's just mechanics, after all. And there are people waking up in the morning and they're down in their way. They don't think mechanics. They think, somebody did this to me. And they come up with all the reasons. And of course, you're a projector. You're open to everybody. You take those beings in very deeply. It becomes a whole endless attachment and blame game. Let go of that stuff. You're never going to live what's you. It's not in the reason-making for yourself. It's not about your mind being clever enough to guide you. It isn't. It isn't. Any more than my mind guides me. I remember what that was like. It's not nice. Doesn't work. It really doesn't. And you see, then you put yourself into a way of life that honors what you are. You're not here to suffer, after all. I mean, you come in onto this plane and the gods say you don't have to work. That's not suffering. If you know how to get there. We all have these beautiful things that are possible for us in the way in which we can fulfill our potential to be a projector. This is something that is really a gift, but to realize that gift, you have to deal with conditioning. You have to be able to see it. You have to be able to recognize it. And you have to be able to accept it. Otherwise, you can't transcend it. Otherwise, you can't turn that conditioning into wisdom. When you look at your chart, those things that are colored in, that's the student. And those things that are white, all those gates, channels, centers that are open, this is where you go to school in life. This is where you can become wise, or what can destroy you. And as a projector, you need to neutralize all those white places. You need to see them for what they are and put them in their proper place. And then, you can really make a difference in your life. Okay, let's have a break.